Stabilization policies refer to the set of measures and actions taken by the governments and central banks to stabilize the overall economy. So here, stabilize the overall economy is to set the measures and actions that government and central bank will take them as measure. So these policies aim to reduce fluctuations such as inflation, unemployment, economic recessions, and promote sustainable economic growth. Some common stabilization policies include fiscal policies, monetary policy, and exchange rate policies. Coming to fiscal policies, as you know, the macroeconomics rate over this government can issue process must go on controversy. At one end of the spectrum are Keynesians and the intellectual discordant who believe that macroeconomics is likely to fluctuate too much if it's left on its own, and the government should smooth out fluctuations in business cycles. General idea can be trusted to Keynesian analytics with general theory, which suggests that government can use their taxing and spending powers to increase aggregate expenditures and thereby to stimulate aggregate output in the recessions and depressions. At the other end, the spectrums are those which claim that the government spending is incapable for stabilizing the economy, or worse, which is destabilizing and harmful. In macroeconomics, we study the government with general, but in general, but limited powers. So specifically, government can affect the macroeconomics through two policies: fiscal and monetary. Fiscal and monetary. So fiscal refers to the government spending and taxing behaviors. In other words, it's a budgeting policies. Fiscal policy is generally divided into three categories: policies concerning government purchases, goods and services, and a policy concerning taxes, and policy concerning the transfer of payments such as unemployment, consumption, and compensations and social security benefits, welfare, general benefits. So the government budget and total spending. Let's just recall the equation of the national income accounting, that's GDP equals to C plus I plus G plus X minus net input M. The left hand side of the equation is GDP, that's the value of all final goods and services produced in the countries. The right hand side is aggregate spending, total spending on final goods and services produced in an economic system of consumer spending, investments, government purchases, and services, and then value of export minus price of import. Government is directly controlling one of the variables on the right hand side of the equation. First, the government purchases of goods and services, but that's not the only effect of fiscal policy. Has on the aggregate spending in the economy, though the changes of the taxes and transfers to also influence the consumer spending and in some cases investment spending. To see why budget affect consumer spending, we look at the disposable income. The total income of household is available to spend is equal to the total income they receive wages, dividends, interest, and rent minus the taxes plus the government transfer. So either an increase in the taxes or reduction in the government transfer usually this disposable income, and fall in the disposable income, other things equals to the leads to fall in consumer spending. Obviously, the decrease in the taxes or an increase in the disposable income or other things equals lead to the rise in spending. The government's ability to affect the investments spending is more complex story, which we are not going to discuss in detail, but the important point is that government taxes profits and changes in the rules that determine how much business owners can increase or reduce their incentives to spend on investments costs because the government itself is the one with the source of spending in the economy and become the taxes and the transfer can affect the spending by consumers and firms. So the government can use the changes in the taxes of government spending to shift the aggregate demand. Now there is expansionary and contractionary risk of policy, and then why the government should be shifting the aggregate demand curve because it was caused and recessionary gain created for aggregate output falls because below potential output and inflationary gap created for aggregate output exceed potential output. So the reason why government want to shift the aggregate demand curve is because it wants to close the recessionary gap that is created when the government output fall below the potential output or to close the inflationary gap created by the aggregate output exceeding the output. So the recessionary gap figure below shows this figure shows the recession gap from Y this one to this one, Y1 to YP. That's the recessionary gap. Say this recessionary gap shows the case economy facing recessionary gap. So the short run recessionary gap, the certain aggregate supply is in the short run aggregate supply curve and the long run aggregate supply curve. The aggregate demand one is initially aggregate demand curve at the initial short run equilibrium one and aggregate output below the potential output of the what is the government would like to do increasing the aggregate demand, shifting the aggregate demand curve rightward to aggregate demand 2. This will increase aggregate output, making it equals to potential output. As we see, this is long run aggregate supply curve showing the aggregate demand from aggregate demand 1 to aggregate demand 2 and the short run aggregate supply and the long run aggregate supply where it's becoming constant and the price varies. As we see, E2 is equilibrium point and the point from Y1 to YP is equals to recessionary gap and the potential output is Y1 and YP. Fiscal policies that increase aggregate demand called expansionary normally takes the one reforms. So it is in increasing government purchases, cut the tax, and increase government transfer. So here the government aim at expanding the base in the money supply, so the inflationary gap can be covered in this way. So this we can find it in the long run aggregate supply curve, and the figure below shows the opposite. It shows this one, the potential, and the inflationary gap is shown is from the point of equilibrium from long run to the aggregate demand 2 to the point where the short run aggregate supply and the aggregate demand 1 meet. This indicates from YP to Y1 is an inflationary gap represented by the potential output or the price falling. So this inflationary gap again the short run aggregate supply curve and the long run aggregate supply curve and the aggregate demand 1 is initially aggregate demand curve. At the initially E1 aggregate output is Y1 above the potential output YP. To eliminate the inflationary gap shown in the figure below, fiscal policy must reduce aggregate demand and shift the aggregate demand curve leftward to AD2. This reduces the aggregate output and makes it equal to potential output. So the fiscal policies that can be used will be the medical contractionary fiscal policies is the opposite of the expansionary fiscal policy. It is implemented in three possible ways. We can reduce the government purchases of goods and services, we can increase taxes, and we can reduce government transfer. So the fiscal policies and the multiplier. This will be another session. So we have to move. Thank you.